same thing. But in all fairness, you can't be systemically or systematically racist to white people. They invented the system. But it doesn't mean you can't be individually prejudiced towards a white individual. And prejudice based on a race or ethnicity, by dictionary definition, is racism.
So I want to get in on this discussion on whether or not white people can experience racism, which just boils down to people having two different understandings of what racism is. One side is saying that racism is prejudice or discrimination directed at someone on the basis of their race when that prejudice is reinforced by systems of power, the prejudice plus power definition. While the other side is saying that racism is any prejudice directed towards a person because of their race, no power needed. So just like what you just seen in the video I played for you, people that argue that white people can experience racism use the Google and dictionary definition of the word to say that what they're saying is objectively true and irrefutable, which basically just isn't accounting for the fact that prejudice plus power is the definition of racism from a sociological perspective. To me, it just seems they have this idea that this is a definition that random people on the internet pulled out of their asses, and it's just like, no. So the argument isn't that black people and people of color can't have racial hatred or prejudice. Of course they can. And a lot of us do. It's just that said racial hatred or prejudice are not backed up by systems of power, which I am not at all saying that that is justification for that hatred. You do not have to be able to call people of color racist to be able to hold them accountable for being hateful. But ignoring the factor of a system of power as a vital component in what defines racism reduces the problem of racism down to how individual people feel about each other, which drastically changes the conversation about combating racism. Because the end goal is no longer dismantling a system, it is now about changing the hearts and minds of individual racist people, which is not only impossible and pointless, it also totally erases the real harm caused by that system of power. It makes racism about hurt feelings. And racism isn't harmful because it hurts people's feelings. Racist behavior is harmful because it reinforces notions that are already so often and heavily perpetuated by the society we live in, keeping the system intact. I feel like trying to draw a line between systemic racism and individual racism doesn't make that much sense. Not once you acknowledge that those individual acts of racism keeps that system intact. By the way, all this is coming from a person that actually used to think otherwise myself. Like I used to swear that white people could experience racism.